Fear is a thought about something that exists outside of you. So if you're the musical instrument vibrating out your unique song, fear is the blanket representing a thought about something outside of you. Hey babes, welcome to Codependency Alchemy, the podcast. I am your host, Alyssa Zander, and if you happen to be watching the video podcast, you will see me in my living room, which is not where I have been recording. I've been recording primarily in our office, but I am moving locations. I had to really sit with myself because there was so much resistance around recording these podcast episodes. And I think it was because I was making it just way too formal. If you follow me on Instagram, TikTok, all of my videos are done in my living room around my house. I'm just kind of walking around and talking in some of my favorite spots in my house, which is really not that big. There's really only a couple spots that I usually sit and record content in. And I had to really think about how I want to feel when I'm recording, how I want to feel when I'm recording videos. And I just felt like I was, almost too rigid. When I watched back the videos and watched back to how I looked and how I was recording, I was just everything in it just made me want to crawl out of my skin. It didn't feel authentic in the way that I feel right now, for example, where I'm sitting on my couch. Hopefully you guys don't hear the noise of the traffic outside my house, but if you do, well, tis life. But I want to just be more conversational with you all. I feel like my channel is way more clear, more potent, more, I guess it lands more even just for me when I'm in this state of flow. And I think I was just bringing too much of that masculine structured energy. And I think there's a place for that. I learned a lot. But I want to lean more into the flow. I want to lean more into being comfortable. I want to sit on my couch and have a conversation with you. I don't want to have to look directly at the camera if I don't want to. I like looking off at the plants and the shrubbery outside my window and the sun, or we're lucky in Portland today, it's sunny. But coming soon will be probably way more rain, which I welcome as well. And maybe you'll hear people doing donuts in the street, because that actually happens around where I live. So yeah, I guess all of that to say, I'm excited to shoot these videos in places around my house that feel comfortable and more conversational. And yeah, I'm also coming home from 4 days away camping at a retreat called Temple of Belonging, which took place in the Columbia River Gorge. And there are still I'm still processing, I'm still integrating. It was an amazing gathering of women, over 150 women, and there were children, and there were so many workshops with amazing facilitators. I'm honored and so privileged that I got to facilitate 2 healing circles and lead a collective of women through a journey. One of the workshops that I facilitated with 2 of my just soul sisters, Des and Antha. We facilitated a workshop called Healing the Sister Wound, which doing it with them is healing the sister wound for all of us, all 3 of us, in such a big way. And then on the last day, I got to support an amazing friend, Cece, and Des and Antha as well, in a sound healing. And I supported through energy work for a group of women who came, and it was so freaking powerful. It was so amazing that was able to happen on the last day, because I can only speak from my experience, but also knowing some of the experience of other women who shared what they were moving through over the weekend, it was a lot of releasing, a lot of stepping into our power, a lot of coming into this safety within so that we can shine bright. Like, that was really the intention that Cece had for the sound healing, was opening our hearts and letting them shine brightly, being seen as this light. I think what Shaven said was like, your light being so bright that it blinds, it's blinding. And so I'm excited to continue to integrate that. I feel like this next season of my life is really about anchoring into all the things that I've created, the podcast, the course, the membership. Codependency Alchemy has really taken form and taken off, and I'm excited to see how it grows. I know I touched on the membership last month. You are welcome to join. Like, October is the month we're celebrating its 1-year anniversary. I love the way that the membership has evolved and grown. I'm excited for this season of its life, where it's going to be very, very much like a private podcast group, basically, where whoever feels called to join the membership gets to submit questions every week, and I will come into the private Telegram broadcast and answer them, just voice note style. So you'll get to have these little excerpts of support, guidance, invitations, reflections, teachings in this space where, you can read like, oh, this question is, how to navigate hyperfixating on the healing journey. I want to know how to do that, or what that's about, because I do that. And you can just click and listen to the little voice note. I'm thinking about maybe even doing videos potentially in there, so we'll see. But that's enough of me just chatting about the updates and what I've been moving through and why we're in my living room instead of the office. But I do want to talk about the fear of abandonment, because in Codependency Alchemy, the membership, we just moved through the fear of abandonment as the theme for the month. And there were some teachings that came through that were just so powerful. I think this was the first month in Codependency Alchemy, the membership, that I got rocked in a very violent way. It's the reason why the membership is looking different moving forward, because I realized my own fear of abandonment coming through so freaking clearly. And I started to see all of my old people pleasing patterns up at the surface. And so I'm excited to share some of the teachings that came through, because it really brought to light how much of my power I was giving away due to my own fears of abandonment. So the first teaching I shared in the membership was, fear dulls our frequency. So what do I mean by fear dulling our frequency? I want you to think of yourself as a frequency. So just imagine how frequency vibrates, how it ripples out into the world. If you can't envision it in your mind, just look up a video or even sound waves, right? And just look at how it moves, how it vibrates, and how it ripples out. And so I want you to imagine fear as the blanket that's placed over the top of us. So if we are a frequency and it vibrates, reverberates, and ripples out, fear is, I'm just going to grab this blanket next to me. fear is the blanket that's just laid over the top of us. So if I'm a frequency and I have a blanket on top of me, how does that frequency change? Does it ripple out the same? Is the sound the same? Is the vibration the same? What ends up happening to that frequency being rippled out? Does it get entangled? Does it get messy? Does it cease to exist? That's a little heavy. It probably doesn't cease to exist, but does it? I don't know. So if fear is the blanket placed over the top, just see how the vibration changes. Notice how it gets dull or quieter or muffled. As my house actually starts vibrating because there's a train going by. It's funny. Notice if you're unable to hear it at all. I want us to begin to think of ourselves as a frequency and fear being the blanket over the top of it. So the plus side about fear being a blanket placed over the top is that it exists outside of us, right? It's something that can be removed. The second teaching I shared in the membership was fear is a thought about something that exists outside of you. I'm going to say that again. Fear is a thought about something that exists outside of you. So if you're the musical instrument vibrating out your unique song to the world, fear is the blanket representing a thought about something outside of you. So something I like to do when I'm experiencing fear is I like to take a piece of paper, and I'm fairly certain I've probably mentioned this in the podcast already, but we're going to mention it again. I take a piece of paper and I write fear at the top of the paper. And then I write a list of all of the fears that I am experiencing. So maybe it's fear around your relationship. Maybe it's a fear about money. Maybe it's a fear around your job or your business. It's usually when there's a big decision that you're about to make. It's usually when you're being invited to extend outside of your comfort zone. When you're about to do something that maybe you've not done yet. So just think about something that you might be experiencing fear around and write a list of all of the things that you fear that could happen. I actually think I have a paper here with all of the ones I wrote down. All right, I do. I'm going to share them with you. This is going to be vulnerable AF. Fear of changing my offerings and my prices. My fears are people will leave me. People will judge me. I'll be broke. No one will join. I'll end up alone. It will mean that I'm a bad person, that I did it wrong, that I am wrong, that I failed. And then I got to that root. And this is the benefit of taking a piece of paper, writing fear, and letting yourself write it all out, because you begin to you'll find yourself at a point where you're like, that's it. And mine was, I am a failure and I'm alone. I am afraid to move, to make the choice, to do the thing, because it holds this deep-seated fear that I will fail and be alone. And when we're able to see the root of the fear, for me, what I notice comes up is this moment of compassion. Of course, I'm not doing the thing. Of course, I'm not taking the action. Of course, I'm frozen because I'm so afraid of failing and being alone. When we're able to see that part of us with compassion, that's when it begins to move, right? So what I invited the women in the membership to move through after they wrote down all their fears is to circle every time there was something outside of you. Every time the fear included or had an attachment to someone or something outside of you, right? And going back to the fears that I just shared with you, it's like people will leave me, people will judge me, no one will join, I'll end up alone, which is, the lack of others, right? All of my fears are attached to people, to something outside of me. So that blanket, right, is people, things, something outside of us. The fear is that blanket, something outside of us. And the third and final teaching that I shared was abandonment persists when we let that blanket stay on top of us. Abandonment persists when we let that blanket stay on top of us. So we may be illusioned to believe that the blanket acts as a security, right? Security blanket. And we think that it's keeping us safe, but it's really keeping us from living into our authentic selves, which is further perpetuating our fear of abandonment, right? Because we are abandoning ourselves. We have this frequency which we are inclined to vibrate at and ripple out as and sing as. However, the fears are those blankets on top of us, and we think it's keeping us safe because it's keeping us in our comfort zone. But really, we find ourselves playing small or people pleasing, doing what we think others want or need, perceiving the needs of others before uncovering, understanding, identifying our own needs, our own wants, our own desires. It's time that we begin to see how we are the ones abandoning ourselves, our frequency, our sound, because we're grasping onto this fucking blanket and holding it over ourselves. So I'm hoping that you can see the blanket that's outside of you and feel this semblance of empowerment and knowing that you get to decide if you want to keep the blanket over your sound, your frequency, your vibration, or if you want to keep it. To see how you are responsible for the song that you sing, the vibration you emit, the ripple in which you have. To see how you are in control of that. Now, these fears are very real, right? They exist. So it's important to validate them, right? That's what the paper was for. The paper is our opportunity to sit with and validate the fears. And then we get to go into accessing where it lives in our body. What does it need? How will it feel when it gets that need met? So taking a moment to move through that, or taking your piece of paper in which you wrote all your fears down on, I want you to turn that paper around and write love on the top. So the other side says fear at the top, back side is going to say love at the top. And then take a moment to rewrite those fears into love. Take evidence that you have that support those thoughts, right? Because what we've conditioned ourselves to do is have the narrative that the fear speaks into, right? People will leave me, I will be judged, no one will join, I'll end up alone. That's the narrative that the fear has held on to. And it's pulled evidence over a lifetime that that is true. And now what we're doing when we're writing love on the back of the page and rewriting those stories is that we want to start pulling evidence for the new narrative, right? That's the act of taking the blanket off. So some of mine were, your work is needed. It helps people. The podcast now has over 10,000 downloads. And I just started this podcast 6 months ago, and it's been messy, right? I receive emails and DMs and people coming to me saying, thank you so much for sharing this. I needed this. I really needed to hear this. This changed the way that I related to my partner. This changed the way that I was sabotaging in my business. This changed the way that I hold and love myself. I'm pulling that evidence of people need, want, and appreciate what it is that I'm doing. It is safe for me to ask for what I need. That when I ask for what I need, people will stay, that more people will come. That when I am resourced, I get to pour more into my passions, my projects, and my work. So I want you to go ahead and take some time to rewrite those fears that you had shared, that you had wrote on the other side of the paper, or whatever side you're on now at this point. We'll keep going back and forth. Rewrite them into love. Pull pieces of evidence that those statements are true. And then I would love to hear what your fears were. I would love to witness you in your shares of how you got to rewrite them. So please take a moment, if you feel called, to go ahead and answer. This is my first time doing this, so hopefully I get it right. On Spotify, if you're listening on Spotify, we have this opportunity to connect more through polls and question boxes. So I'm gonna leave an opportunity for you to share what came through for you in this episode. I would love to hear from you and hear about maybe 1, maybe 10 of the things that you rewrote or the fears that came up, and yeah, witness you in that. So if you could please just take a moment to allow yourself to be witnessed in that and respond in the Q&A box. I would love to connect with you in that way. If you're not listening on Spotify, but you're like, yes, Alyssa, please, let's chat about this, you can always send me an email, DM on Instagram, or send me an email. You can find the links to all the things below. My Stan store has all my offerings, the course, the membership. I would love for you to join us in the membership. It would be a freaking honor to get this membership popped off the way that I can see it, envision it growing and expanding. I'm so excited to co-create it with you all. So if you haven't already, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast so that more people can receive this support, the ones that are feeling called to healing this and healing it in community. Your ratings and reviews help me so much as a small creator, so thank you so much. You can join my Substack newsletter for $9 a month. It helps support me keep this podcast going as well as all the other things that I put out every day. So if you feel called to subscribe to Substack and get 2 newsletters a week, every Wednesday I share updates on episodes and things that I'm moving through, and every Friday I offer a shadow work invitation. So there's a lot of juicy stuff happening over there too. Again, all the links will be below. Thank you so much. I absolutely loved recording in this new space, so more of this to come soon. I love you all and have a beautiful rest of your week. Until next time. Thank you for joining me on Codependency Alchemy. I hope this podcast continues to offer you valuable insights and tools for breaking free from destructive patterns and creating healthy, fulfilling connections with others. Remember, healing from codependency is a journey, and it's important to be patient and compassionate with yourself along the way. Whether you're just starting out on your path or you've been working on your codependency for a while, know that you are not alone and that it is possible to create meaningful change in your life and relationships. And if you found this podcast helpful, I would love it if you would consider leaving an honest rating and review so that others can discover these valuable insights and tools as well. Find out how codependency might be impacting your life by taking the self-assessment, which you can find in the show notes below. Thanks again for tuning in, and remember, you are worthy of healthy, fulfilling relationships, and you have the power to transform your codependency into sovereignty.